Hi, everybody.
You're listening to Talking with Tech.
Welcome to Talking with Tech. My name is Chris Bouguet, and I'm recording in my car with
Rachel Madel.
How's it going, Rachel?
I'm really excited that we're doing some podcast recording in the car, Chris.
So why are we in the car together? Well, because Rachel traveled all the way here to Virginia to present at the technology conference. We presented together a full day presentation with what a wonderful experience we had. In fact, that's who you heard at the beginning of this episode, where we asked anyone who wanted to be on the podcast to kind of yell out that they're listening to Talking with Tech. So, which is always a fun thing to do in the middle of our presentation.
It is. It's always fun. And people, you can see sometimes when we're saying, you're going to be on the podcast, some people get afraid. Some people are like, oh no, what does that mean? But then we're like, it's fine. We're just going to all collectively shout out, you're listening to Talking with Tech.
So it's super fun, and we had a great experience. What makes an experience of presenting to me so great is the interactivity, right? The conversations that we have, because we say this all the time. You and I have a podcast. You can listen to us talk once a week, and you can go back to the 5 years plus worth of content and listen to us talk. What's much more fun and engaging is to have a conversation together, and that is certainly what happened at the technology conference. When I say technology, and it's weird, the way it's spelled is tech with a K. So T-E-C-H and then knowledge with a K. So technology, K-N-O-W. I don't know if I'm spelling it, but you get the idea. It was this day-long event where we talked all about designing and delivering AAC, and we had these rich discussions about I don't know, what were some of the things you remember from what we talked about at the live event?
Well, one thing I love about our full day talk, Chris, is that it's never the same talk twice. It's so fun to see how the conversation takes turns to the left, to the right, and it's just the coolest thing about it, because we're always having different experiences and sharing. And, a lot of what we talked about and what we usually talk about in the beginning is all about mindset. And the thing that really stuck out to me was it was a mixed group of professionals. So we had a lot of SLPs, but we also had teachers and paraprofessionals and OTs. And it was super interesting because I think I saw a lot of evolution in some of the participants that were sharing a lot of their experiences. I think that a lot of people come into AAC and they come into trainings and they don't give themselves enough credit for how much they actually know.
Like Heather and Lauren and Amy, right? And especially Melissa. Melissa, at the beginning, this person said, I don't know anything, 0, I know nothing. My answer across the board is 0, I don't know anything. And by the end, it's like, you know a lot. Her reflection, her takeaway at the end was, I know a lot more than I thought I knew.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that it's just a nice reminder for everyone who's listening out there. We always kind of second guess how much we know and our level of expertise, especially in a field like AAC where it's so vast. You can't possibly know all the things, all the tools, all the settings, all of the research. But the reality is none of us know all the things, right? We know where to find the information, and we're constantly trying to grow and learn and challenge ourselves to, develop our skills. And it's just, again, a good reminder that, we know a lot more than we think we know.
For sure. Now, that wasn't the only event that we participated in recently. We also closed up an ongoing webinar series that we had not with one, but with 2 different school districts, one up in Vermont and the other in Arizona. And so what were some of your takeaways from those events where we had our final concluding webinars?
Yeah, so those were really great. They happened throughout the year, and so it's really fun to follow a school district or an organization throughout the year and kind of keep checking in with them and having, additional webinars throughout the year. And so I really saw a lot of growth with these organizations that we worked with, and some familiar faces, especially people who decide to, contribute a lot to the conversation and participate. And it's really cool to, again, see people's skills grow and people learning new information and then applying it and coming back and sharing everything that they've applied and what, how their practices have shifted. The Arizona organization, they bought, how many iPads did they say they bought? 200?
Yeah, like 200.
200 iPads? And to put AAC, speech generating apps on them. So it's really cool to see. And it's, again, another great reminder that, if we set an intention to continuously learn and grow, it's really awesome to see how that can happen over the course of just a school year.
One of the exciting things about this particular one of the events was that both of those were focused mostly on coaching, right? A large chunk of our time was talking about coaching. And one of the groups said, actually, we have a video, we have the proper permissions. Do you mind if we share this video and you can give us feedback? In fact, I think it was it was a teacher. The teacher was working with a child and the speech therapist was filming the experience. And then we had the opportunity to do a little coaching call right there authentically on the actual video. And that to me was awesome. Sometimes we have to do some sort of artificial coaching experience, which is fine. It's all fine. People get the idea of what coaching is, but able to do it with an actual child in an actual authentic situation, it was just sweet. It was just so sweet. And I think that particular person, I think her name was Nicole, I think was like rocking it. You know what I mean? Really doing a great job. And got some good feedback. We asked her some reflective questions and she was like, okay, what I think I'd like to do more is add more expansions onto what I'm modeling. It was like, yes, exactly. What a great feedback. All right, what are you going to do to make that happen? So it was really a great experience.
I know. It was really great to watch the video. And it also was a really awesome moment for the group because they were able to kind of celebrate these small wins, which part of, my feedback was, yes, everything I'm seeing in this is amazing, but the actual act of taking a second to have the SLP record this teacher doing this beautiful job modeling during a shared reading experience was so powerful to then share with the team. You can send that video home to share with the parent. And it's like building that momentum within teams is part of what needs to happen in order to be successful with AAC. And so it was just a really cool experience. I love that she shared a video and was brave enough to do that because I can recognize that makes you feel a little vulnerable when you are sharing a video of you interacting and especially, in a group kind of professional development situation. So yeah, it was really cool to see and was really happy that she shared.
One of the other participants had mentioned how creating an environment where you are expected to make mistakes and then you can grow from those mistakes is exactly the sort of culture you want to be in, where it can often feel weird or strange or scary that someone's going to be evaluating you or judging you or making some sort of, weird thought about how your performance is, and instead building a culture around it's okay to make mistakes. We can't all know that's the idea, is to get better and grow. And certainly that seemed to be the case for this school district where they were trying to create that culture.
I think you brought up a really good point, Chris, of this idea of a performance. Like, how are we performing? And so I think that that's oftentimes what it feels like when someone's recording you, when you're participating in a coaching experience. And I think that that is where a lot of people's kind of insecurities and, that doesn't sound like something I want to do. That sounds like something I'm nervous about. And so I think that just like reframing that and, at the end of that conversation, we talked about this idea that when we are growing and learning, it's usually when we're a little uncomfortable, right? Like growth does not happen when we're sitting in our comfort zone feeling real cozy. It happens when we, have to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. We have to try something new. We have to be open to feedback. And so it was just kind of a nice little bow that we put at the end of the presentation.
Which leads us in the interview today. The interview today was educators that reached out wanting to talk about their implementation of the specific language system first approach and how they could make it even better. So without further ado, here's our interview with Samantha Hagness and Becky Woolley.
Do you love this podcast? We would love for you to take a second and leave us a review on iTunes. That way, more people can find this podcast and learn how to support individuals using AAC. We also love hearing from our listeners. It reminds us that all of the hard work we put into this podcast really matters. And don't forget to subscribe so you always know when we release new podcasts. Now let's head back into the episode.
Welcome to Talking with Tech. My name is Chris Bouguet, and today I'm sharing the room with Samantha Hagness and Becky or Rebecca. What is it, Becky or Rebecca?
Becky, actually.
Becky Woolley, right? Am I saying your names correctly?
Yes.
All right. Well, Samantha and Becky, welcome to Talking with Tech. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
All right. So we are the Assistive Technology Department for Mesa Public Schools. We both have a background in speech language and hearing sciences, but we have been working together. This is our first year together as the Assistive Technology Department. So Becky was in the department last year and I came on this year. And she is full of ideas. And so we've just created so many things already this school year. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's start. Tell what have you created? What you've been working on?
Okay. So we, maybe a little bit of like context or background will help. So in our district, before I started in the AT department last year. So this is my second year. And before that, the speech language pathologist who was part of the AT department had already kind of instituted the specific language first system, approach, and had been doing that for years. I think just because that's what intuitively felt effective to him. And so our district has been using TouchChat as like a tier 1, AAC system for a long time. And then that actually SLP, he left the district and he went to work for SmartBox or Think
Okay.
SmartBox.
Yes. So that person is Doug Cutler.
Yes, Doug
Said we
Cutler.
could use his name.
Right. Yeah, we talked about it. And he wanted to brainstorm some ideas regarding Grid 3, which we do use some in our district as Tier 3 AAC, right? When our TouchChat's not meeting our needs for all of our students, it's something that we have access to. So we were familiar with it. We've used it a little bit. He came and sat down and was showing us their Grid for Education, which is still Grid 3, but packaged a little differently. And I suddenly had this huge aha moment where I realized that software could be used in whole awesome ways I had never really thought about before.
And I was in the other room because someone had come to ask a question and she was like, come here, you have to see this. And I could just see, I don't know, the light bulbs going off and just the magic in our eyes. And it was really easy to get the vision.
Yeah. So then that vision, I guess, is that we are intending to use Grid 3 as a classroom instructional tool. So
Okay.
in our district, we have just big, huge TV monitors in every single classroom. And those are actually going to be switched out they're called New Line panels, and they are a standalone device that'll be touchscreen. So think of a cooler version of a a more modern version of a smartboard.
Mhm.
It's an interactive whiteboard.
Yes,
Yes.
interactive whiteboard. All right, so those are going into all of our classrooms. And so the idea is that I had just been in a lot of preschool classrooms and other classrooms, and I had seen all these barriers with me and other SLPs and other service providers wanting teachers to model on core boards and model on devices during circle times and classroom routines. And we've been putting core boards all over the room, and we have devices for kids to try to make that easier. And we've got coaching built in and all these pieces, but I'm still watching teachers sometimes play a welcome song video, which is great and fun. And the kids are doing gestures and maybe singing along. And then we just move to the next activity. And I was like, there's gotta be a better way.
And I think it was the same with and now we're going to read a book, and they read a book and they just read a book, and so with our SLP background, it's just like, oh my gosh, there's so many opportunities that we're missing. But I think also, like Becky was saying, we're wanting them to model and do all these things, but we have all these barriers because how we have it set up right now is, sure, you can use this giant core board, or you can run around and model on students' devices, or you can open chat editor, but it's like another step. And that extra step is where we're falling apart.
Right.
So then
with
Wait,
grid,
let
Yeah.
me stop you there because I think people listening might have some questions. Okay.
Yeah,
So
sure.
let me play the part of a listener in their car
Uh-huh.
going, well, wait a second. Okay. So let's start with the scenario you just explained where the preschool kids are listening to the morning circle time, routine. And then the teacher directed says, okay, now we're going to go read a book. Right. And you're sort of painting a picture that's maybe problematic in some ways. But I bet a lot of people listening are like, what do you mean? That's what preschool is. So what would you advocate would work differently?
Right. So what we would love to see is some language embedded into that activity and opportunities for language and communication and learning. So as we're reading the book, more of a shared reading activity where our AAC users can be just as involved as any other participant in the classroom, or we're watching, this fun YouTube video about letters and letter sounds, and we can embed some core language, verbs and describe adjectives, right into our activity with it just being all in one spot right there on the monitor in front of the classroom.
Gotcha. Now, is that, just to be clear, since you were using TouchChat and you mentioned Chat Editor, can you explain what Chat Editor is real quick?
Sure. Yeah. So Chat Editor is just the companion software that is free to download on Saltillo's website. And it allows you to create visuals using the same icons that are on TouchChat. It also will allow you to basically display a TouchChat device. It just doesn't have voice output. So that was one of our barriers. It can, right? Like if you had a child who's using a Nova Chat, right, you can plug it in to get voice output, but in the way that we're using it, we don't have voice output.
Right.
Gotcha. So would it be fair to say that teachers were not opening up Chat Editor and using it for a modeling purposes on well, I guess it sounds like you didn't have interactive whiteboards beforehand, but even pointing to things on a TV screen or something, that wasn't happening.
I don't want to say
Universally.
it wasn't happening, but
Yeah.
it wasn't happening to the degree that we wanted it to.
Yeah,
Right.
That's fair. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
And even when it does happen, like, it's just not fun if there's not voice output sometimes, like it's still my voice. Or if I'm the one doing it, I found that a lot. Like, I'm already talking a lot, and it's better to have a different voice. It just really, it seems better.
Right.
Okay. All right.
I don't know the research on that, but I think it's true that it's better.
Yeah, for sure. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also just that idea that splitting, so some of our teachers would know how to split the screen and have one activity on one half of their monitor and Chat Editor on the other half. And then maybe some are comfortable toggling between two different things, but that's not as intuitive or easy for all of our teachers.
Right. And then we're still running into the issue of we still are going to be doing this, but we still need to get that idea across what words should we be modeling and which ones are the important ones. And so by using Grid 3, we're able to sort of already pick that out for them.
Tell me more, because I'm not familiar with the Grid 3 for education.
Yeah.
And
Do
how
you think that it would be helpful if we share our screen while we're trying to describe that, or just talk about it?
It might be better just to talk about it, because then you'll have to be forced to describe it rather than me.
Yeah,
trying
absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just going to open
listening.
up a page to help us then as we're going through this. Okay.
So imagine that on your big, huge screen, 2/3 of your classroom screen, or monitor, is able to pull up anything you want from the web. So a YouTube video, an article, a news article, whatever you want.
Okay.
And then around that 2/3, underneath it and to the left or right-hand side of it, you have picked symbol-based icons with voice output.
Okay.
So I've got core words underneath where my my web-based display or video or article is. You've got core words underneath it. And then maybe I've got some fringe words to the right-hand side of it. And then maybe some options to go to an enrichment activity.
Okay.
And also we have like a keyboard, right? So like right there on that same screen, we have access to some like literacy, just right there, click of a button. Now we've opened up this big keyboard that then everyone.
All right, some clarifying questions. So the keyboard would be an and or. Is it and or is it or?
Well, right now it's or, but it will be and. Like, we are going to build it into all the pages.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying you would build these pages?
Yes.
So let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So let's say I'm a preschool teacher and I want to do a lesson around the words up and down, right? Like I've decided I'm going to teach up and down let's say up and down. And so I have this great book that has things go up and down. I can have this book, this Tar Heel Reader book that I've created, have that in one window, and then I can have all sorts of core vocabulary and maybe fringe vocabulary around the periphery that sort of ties to the book.
Yes.
Right. So you might have the word like turn the page up and down clearly. Right. And maybe some fringe vocabulary related to the book that's, if I'm going up, there's an elevator. So elevator, right. Those sorts of things. Is that a good description? Is that what you're
That
thinking?
is a good description. And I don't know that we clarified this. So we said that we have to build it. And so the really cool thing about Grid for Education, or just Grid 3 in general, is that one, they have online grids already. So there's just a huge database, and sort of like in the same way that like Boardmaker Online would be, right? So I can go in and I can pull grids that someone else has already created. But what we're also able to do as our AT department, and hopefully collaborating with other people who, speech therapists and teachers who are really excited about this, and OTs, is we're going to be able to create this. And then we are going to be able to share it out. So it can be online, but we can also just email it out. And so what we have then created is really easy for everyone to access.
Okay. Continue on, please.
Okay. So I think so our administration has been really great. I think
gosh.
That's just something
amazing.
We presented this idea to them, we want to build in this really fun, classroom support so we can take things to the next level, I guess, right? With AAC and assistive technology in our district. And they were on board and all excited to do it.
Because our original vision was really preschool, because our preschools are kind of changing next year in the district as a whole. And they really wanted to emphasize visuals and visual supports. And we were like, yes, that's great. But also let's look at this, because we think we can even do more than what people are imagining. So then we shared it, and everyone wants it, right? Every single director was like, yes, I can see this. We want this. We want this. And so we're actually going to try to do this for all of our self-contained classrooms and our preschool classrooms.
Okay.
So that's a big rollout. And that's part of why we reached out to you, because we have never, Samantha or I, ever rolled out a software at this capacity to our district. And we're like, okay, we would like to do it well and not just overwhelm people, and make sure that we're considering all the different things that we maybe don't even know we should be considering. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, here's some initial thoughts. All right. And I'm going to coax these, what's the right word? I don't know. I'm going to put these thoughts in question format, right? So my first question would be, are you thinking of using this instead of Chat Editor or in addition to Chat Editor?
Well, so TouchChat on iPads will still be our tier 1 AAC. But I don't know, Chat Editor would maybe still be used on a teacher's just normal laptop to create a visual or to print out or something like that. But I think that as far as putting it up for whole group instruction and to have up for the whole classroom to see, this would probably replace Chat Editor. Yeah.
And I don't think we mentioned that, but another grid that you can have is, so they have word power built into Grid 3. So that can't go onto an iPad, but it can go on these classroom screens that we have. So when the teacher isn't using this as a teaching tool, right, when we're not watching our videos, when we're not reading our books, what's going to happen is they will just have Word Power 60 on this giant screen. So there is a giant communication board that is robust for any student to access throughout the rest of the day.
When you say TouchChat is your tier 1, is it with Word Power 60?
Yes.
Gotcha. So okay. Because I think that was something that I was not clear to me, is that when we know with modeling, right, that it's not just modeling anything, it's modeling the words in the same location on the student's tool, right? So if I'm saying go, I got to model where go is. And so that was the first thing that sort of came up in my mind when we were thinking about like, well, go, or I guess if we stick to up and down, if up is in a different location and it's not in the same place as my tool, I'm sitting there sort of being in the experience. Am I really learning where up is? Is it really being modeled for me? And what are your thoughts on that?
So Word Power 60, like when we have just the communication device up, it will align well with TouchChat. Like grid threes, Word Power 60 and TouchChats are going to align really well. As far as like when it's just the peripherals around your learning objective, it's a different setup.
It is
not going to be the exact same.
It's not going to be the exact same, but we did try to keep it. So we only have 2 lines at that core, but we tried to keep it as consistent as possible, right? So if there were an option to keep it in the same place, we did. And it's the same like general layout, right? So, I mean, we do have I and you as I'm looking at this on the left in yellow. And then we have, some of those verbs. And so some of them are in the same location, but they're not all in the same location. Yeah. But I do think as we're teaching this, right, the teacher can absolutely be modeling go on this in the front of the room. And then hopefully, right, we do have IAs in the classroom who could also then be modeling on the students' personal devices. Okay. So I think there are ways that we can like build that in, but yes, we hear what you're saying.
We do hear what you're saying.
Okay, yeah, because that also kind of aligns with the motor plan, right? Keeping the buttons in the same spot. So the idea of modeling on Word Power 60, that sort of really resonates with me. Like, yeah, because it's in the same spot. I'm seeing it in the same place. I don't have to do as much hunting around. I could see an eventuality where maybe every teacher has access to an iPad with TouchChat with Word Power 60. So like you said, the paraprofessionals or the teacher themselves could have the grid behind them, but then also modeling on an iPad with that Word Power 60. So you're having a multimodal experience. Let me ask this question is, again, not being familiar with Grid for Education, what's the symbol set look like? Is it a different set of symbols than Word Power 60?
No, it's symbol sticks. It's
okay, it's still symbols.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
so it would look the same.
It looks the same. Their font changes a little bit. That's one thing we have to like decide if that matters, right? Like, because it does look a little different when you look at it. It's like, wait, is that the same? But it is, right? Like some of the icons have moved, but it's pretty consistent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably. We thought about that. Like, do we want to change the font so that it's just the same, or
I don't know if the fonts are going to make that big of a.
I don't. But it looks. But when you see it right away, like I feel like people have a hard time believing me that it's the same. They're like, "Well, is it going to line up with this scoreboard that you created for the whole district?" I'm like, "Well, it does." They're like, "But it doesn't look the same." I'm like, "Look again." Right. Like it does. So just for that buy-in would be just so people get that it's the same.
It could be one more barrier that people are hanging their hat on, as opposed to look, you could just eliminate that barrier if it was the same font.
Right.
Gotcha. Well, okay. Well, I mean, it sort of makes sense to me with the idea that that if you're modeling on the similar system, I'm a little concerned about the outside, like that it's not in the same spot. But I don't have enough evidence to say that wouldn't. Have you done some pilots here where you've tried it in some places?
We're not there yet, but hopefully, like that's the goal. That before the end of the school year, we do try this out in some of the classrooms before we push it out to everyone. Something I would be considering would be, how does a teacher manage modeling on a system and modeling on the grid 3 layout together? Do you know? And that's what I'd want to maybe try I would invite you to try in a pilot sort of way. We've got some champions that are going to rock and roll with this. We know who our first, our early adopters will be, right? You know what I mean? Let's try it in this small sort of focus group and then get feedback. That might be really a great way to tweak things. And then also when you're asking about a question about a larger rollout, if you decide to roll this out in a much larger scale,
Well, now you've already got these champions. You've already got proof of concept. You've got little videos you can show people of how it's supposed to look and how it's supposed to work, rather than sort of go whole hog everywhere first, only to find out, well, how it's supposed to work. I don't know. Most teachers are going to fall in I always think of educators, well, really anybody on a bell diagram, a bell curve. Most are going to fall in that middle swath of like, I don't know. So I would find those early adopters, get proof of concept, get feedback from them, get them on board as your champions, and then bring the rest of the crew on board, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like I don't envision, like in my mind, and Becky totally chime in. But I don't necessarily envision that we're going to have a teacher who's going to, so we have this grid pulled up right now, right? And it has like and go on it. So I don't know that I envision that the teacher would model go on this grid and then open up the other grid that has word power and necessarily model go in that instance. But I think what having those core words pulled out is going to do is it will help the paraeducators, right? The other adults in the classroom know, oh, now that's what I need to be modeling for this student. And so they have core boards that align with the student's devices, or they have classroom devices where they can model. But I don't necessarily think we're going to have a teacher. I mean, sometimes, like, it'll be great if they have that pulled up, but I'm picturing like this instance where we have this welcome song. I don't know that they'll necessarily be doing both. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that logic sort of tracks with how shared Tar Heel Reader works. So if listeners are not familiar, that is, Tar Heel Reader is a place where you can make online books. And it's sort of like think of it as a Switch accessible slide deck, right? And the original version, it's just, and you can still access this, it's just pictures with text. You can either, hit an arrow key to move through the slides or turn the pages, or you can use a switch. It has speech output. But in the most recent version, they've added symbols that go underneath. And the symbols are not meant to say, well, this is it's not meant to take the place of AAC. It's meant to help you understand what words you could use to model on the AAC. And it sounds like that's what you're going with, as long as the teachers are actually modeling on something similar, or not the teachers, somebody is, that the learners are experiencing that. My fear would be that they wouldn't. Right. So it'd be something you'd want to bake in right from the beginning is, in your test study cases, why I think a pilot might be really beneficial is I can see the two of you kind of just sitting back watching and be like, oh, they're never touching that. They're never touching word power 60. How are we actually modeling anything? Do you know what I mean? And then go back to that, or maybe I'm wrong. Like maybe oh my gosh, they're doing it all the time. Chris is totally unfounded here in his worries because look at how much they're modeling it. Do you know what I mean? Then you have some sort of proof of concept.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking one of the reasons that I saw it and was like, oh, so many good applications was because, like, I'm sure other districts experience or in general, sometimes getting any modeling can be a little bit of a challenge, right? We have really fantastic teachers, and we're trying to build capacity. And I was hoping, and the hope, at least part of my vision, was that having something on their computer where it's all kind of built in for them, they've got like their activity with core language right there, would maybe help build some of that capacity and help them start to just be comfortable communicating in pictures and modeling some picture language for their students.
I think it makes a lot of sense. It's sort of like a little cheat sheet that you've created. Like, these are the words you model, right? Rachel and I advocate for something similar. So are you familiar with Upgoer 6? Have you ever heard of Upgoer 6? All right. So do a Google search if you want to do it right now, because I know you have another window open. Just Google Upgoer 6. And what it is, it's a free web tool where you can type in a sentence. And when you type in a sentence, it then provides that sentence in a color-coded fashion with the more frequently used words in green and the less frequently used words, the fringe vocabulary, in red. And so we advocate for typing in something in. Are you looking at it? You see?
No, go or 6.
Upgoer, like Goer, Upgoer 6.
We got it now.
So you type in a sentence, right? And it's going to then produce that sentence in a color-coded fashion where the most frequently used words are green and the more infrequently used are red, with a sliding scale there where the more frequently the darker green and the more fringy the word, the darker red, right? We could then you could print that, cut it out, stick that into a book, right? So if you had typed in the words in a book and now you say model the green words, right? Don't worry about the red, or eventually we'll start modeling on that keyboard you were talking about. Let's start typing those red ones into the, but just to get started, just model the green words, paraprofessional. You're lapping everyone who's not modeling if you model the green words, right? So that same idea is what you're talking about here, is like, see these words up here? This is your cheat sheet. Model these words, right? As long as that's how it's used and it's not used if I just push this thing, then if I just push it, I've created this grid that's on the outside and it doesn't really match the layout of the AAC user's device. That's where it might be problematic. As a tool, as a cheat sheet, yes. As a model here, and it should translate over here, I think that might be, I'm not sure that would work.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Fair. Yeah.
And I think one thing that we could do as we're talking, I'm thinking, so I have this grid open, right? And you can really easily, we can link it very easily to word power. So like we have this grid open, we have our video. Very quickly, they can press this button and it can open word power. And then maybe, we could even do something with borders to make these same core words, right, that are on this page really pop. So I had them here. I was modeling them right as the song was playing. And now I click on my word power and now I see them and they're popping and I'm remembering, oh yeah, like that's what we were saying during that song or whatever.
Right.
Sounds exciting. I'd love to. You got to come back on and talk about how it's working after you implemented it. How this, first of all, let me ask you, what are you thinking about the pilot? Does that resonate with you, or you're like?
Oh, absolutely. That's definitely something we want to do. And it's on our list to talk to the director about what we're meeting with on Friday. So I think that makes a ton of sense. I think it will give us a lot of good information. And the cool thing about Grade 3 is that there is a free 60 days. I think it's 60, might even be a 90-day trial, but there's a nice trial, right? That would get us close to the end of the school year, right? So we can try this for now.
And you know a guy. You know a guy.
And you do know a guy. That's
right.
So true.
But that just helps us, right? Like really try this out.
Yeah. And see what happens with it and make sure that it's not just, we're only talking here now, never on our individual devices, because yes, I don't want that to happen, but I do want modeling to happen and more language to be embedded in the activities. Right.
Can I ask some other follow-up questions here?
Yes,
when I sort of suggest these champions, did names pop into your mind? Like, are you already like, yeah, we know who we're going to ask,
We do.
I do have some
ideas.
Yeah.
When they listen back to this episode, they were like, oh, they were thinking of me. I know.
All right.
Okay. What do you think the timeline looks like for something like that? We're recording now. It's the middle of February, because that'll be part of the rollout, right?
So we would want to pilot soon. We would want to start piloting soon. Like, within the next couple of weeks, maybe start at least introducing it to some classrooms, how that goes.
And then in an ideal world, we would be rolling out at the beginning of next school year.
Yeah.
Cool.